Ladies and gentlemen, you see, we often chase after others thinking their presence will validate our being. But what if the world has misled us? What if loneliness is not a void to be filled, but an invitation to be still, to be whole, as we are, without needing anyone to mirror back our worth? In solitude, the noise fades, the endless comparisons, the fears of rejection, the constant striving, they dissipate like mist in the morning sun. And what emerges is something far more profound, the realization that within you lies a world far richer than anything outside. You are not alone, you are with yourself, the one companion you will always have. And though it may seem paradoxical, even in solitude, you are never separate. You breathe the same air, feel the same sun, and share the same heartbeat as the cosmos. The interconnectedness of all things does not rely on proximity or conversation. It exists simply because you are alive. When there is no one to lean on, you become the source of your own strength. There is power in knowing that your joy does not hinge on another's approval, nor does your sorrow demand another's consolation. You are free. Free to explore, to create, to dance in the space of your own being. This freedom, however, comes with a gift, the understanding of impermanence. Friends come and go. People drift in and out of our lives like clouds across the sky. To cling to them is to suffer, but to let them pass is to find peace. The woman with no friend knows this truth. She lets go, not in despair, but in gratitude for the beauty of the fleeting moments. And when the time is right, this solitude does not isolate her, but opens her heart to a deeper connection. For in embracing her aloneness, she rediscovers the beauty of the world. She finds companionship not in the noise of many, but in the silence that speaks of everything. Loneliness, we often believe, is a state of being deprived, a gap in our existence that must be filled by the presence of others. We tend to define ourselves by the relationships we form, the friends we have, the company we keep. Yet, what if this feeling of isolation is not inherent, but rather an illusion, a distortion of the mind? This illusion is not a natural condition, but a result of the societal framework we find ourselves in. From childhood, we are taught to rely on others for validation, to measure our worth by the approval of peers, and to find our identity in the roles we play within groups. We grow up conditioned to believe that solitude equates to something lacking, that being alone somehow diminishes our value. But if we step back and observe, we find that loneliness, as we know it, is often a reflection of our desires and attachments. We look outward, seeking something external to fill a space within, while neglecting the richness within ourselves. It is not the absence of others that causes this feeling of emptiness, but the absence of an understanding of our own inner wholeness. When we are alone, we are given the rare opportunity to explore this internal terrain, to discover that we are not fragmented, not incomplete. We are not defined by the people around us or the roles we fulfill. Our essence is far more expansive than any external relationship can define. The loneliness we experience arises from the false belief that we need others to affirm our existence, but the truth is, we are already whole as we are. The concept of loneliness shifts when we begin to realize that all experiences, whether with others or in solitude, are just expressions of the greater whole. We are part of a vast interconnected web of life, where every breath, every moment is an integral part of the unfolding universe. In this light, the feeling of being alone is simply a momentary lapse in understanding our inherent connection to everything around us. Loneliness disappears when we see that we are never truly separate from the world and never truly separate from ourselves. When we let go of the belief that we must seek fulfillment in the presence of others, we begin to see that solitude is not something to fear, but something to embrace. In the quiet moments when there are no external distractions, we can tap into the deep well of inner peace and begin to understand that true companionship exists not in the physical presence of others, but in the presence we have with ourselves.
Loneliness, so often perceived as a void, is actually a complex mental construct shaped by our expectations, our comparisons, and our deep-rooted beliefs about what it means to be whole. It suggests a lack, a yearning for something more, something we believe will fill the empty spaces inside us. Yet in truth, the experience of loneliness often arises not from the absence of others, but from the absence of connection with ourselves. It is not so much the absence of company that we truly fear, but the discomfort of facing our own minds when all external distractions fade. We live in a world that constantly reinforces the notion that our happiness, our sense of completeness, is bound to others. The media, society, even our closest relationships often tell us that we are defined by our connections, by how many friends we have, how much affection we receive, how much we belong. The feeling of loneliness becomes amplified by these external pressures, where the absence of a companion feels like a failure, a mistake, something to be ashamed of. But this is a false narrative, one that traps us in a cycle of seeking approval and validation from the outside world. True loneliness is not about being physically alone, it's about the disconnection from our own deeper self, from the very essence of our being. In the quiet moments of solitude, when no one else is around, we are often forced to confront the truths we tend to ignore. And yet it is precisely in these moments that we have the potential for the greatest growth. By sitting with ourselves in silence, we discover that we are not incomplete, we are not missing something. In fact, we are already whole. The need for external validation fades when we understand that we hold the keys to our own fulfillment within. At the heart of this illusion is a misunderstanding of what it means to be with others. Real connection, true companionship, is not about mere proximity or interaction. It is about a deeper recognition of shared existence. We are all interconnected, not in the way we typically define relationships, but in the subtle, unspoken understanding that we are part of something greater than ourselves. In solitude, we can feel this connection more profoundly, without the noise of expectation or obligation. When we look inward and acknowledge our own company, we discover that loneliness is not a permanent state but a passing thought. It is a transient feeling, one that emerges only when we forget the infinite ways we are already connected to the universe. There is a wisdom in being alone that offers us the space to explore our own hearts, our own thoughts, and our own desires. In solitude, we are free from the influence of others, free to understand who we truly are without the need for approval or companionship to define us. Thus, the illusion of loneliness is not about the absence of friends or loved ones. It is about the belief that we are separate from the world, from ourselves, and from the endless flow of life that surrounds us. When we break free from this illusion, we discover that we are not alone at all. We are part of a vast, interconnected web of life, where every thought, every moment is a reflection of the whole. Loneliness disappears when we understand that to be alone is simply to be in the presence of our truest self. The illusion of loneliness is a construct that emerges when we forget the profound interconnectedness of all things. We are conditioned to view our lives as isolated journeys, where our worth is determined by the relationships we maintain and the company we keep. We have been taught to seek fulfillment from others, and when that fulfillment is absent, we mistake the space left behind as a void. But in reality, the idea of being separate or alone is far removed from the truth of our existence. At the very core of the universe, everything is in constant relationship, whether it's the ebb and flow of the tides, the movement of the stars, or the unseen dance of energy between all living beings. This interdependence is not something external to us, but something that runs through our veins, present in every breath, in every thought, in every experience. The notion that we are separate from this web, that we can be isolated from the flow of life, is the true illusion. When we are alone, we are not disconnected from the world around us. On the contrary, we are in direct communion with the vastness of existence itself. Our very solitude is a part of the same universal rhythm. Just as the tree stands alone in the forest, yet is deeply rooted in the earth, connected to all other trees and plants through the soil, we too are inextricably linked to the universe. The absence of another human being does not sever this connection, it simply shifts the focus inward, allowing us to experience a different form of interconnectedness. In these moments of solitude, we may feel a temporary sense of separation from the world we know. But if we open ourselves fully, we can sense the subtle currents of life that flow through all things. The quiet becomes a space where we can reconnect not to others in the conventional sense, but to the energy, the rhythm, the deep pulse that binds all life together. This is the underlying truth of our existence. We are never alone, because we are part of the whole. True loneliness only arises when we forget this connection, when we mistakenly believe that our worth is tied to others' presence. But once we begin to understand the deeper currents that bind us, loneliness evaporates. It is not the absence of another person that makes us whole. It is our awareness of the vast, invisible web of life that sustains us. Every moment, every breath, every experience is a reminder of our place in the grand design, a reminder that we are never truly separate from the world. When we look beyond the surface and into the deeper truths of existence, we realize that there is no such thing as being alone. The illusion of loneliness crumbles when we acknowledge that we are part of something much greater, a continuous flow of life that connects us all, beyond time, beyond space, beyond the confines of physical relationships. In our solitude, we are simply in the process of remembering this fundamental truth. Solitude, often perceived as a burden, is in fact a space of immense power. It is the fertile ground where growth occurs, where creativity blooms, and where self-awareness can flourish in ways that would otherwise remain hidden amidst the noise of constant interaction. To be alone is to be free from the expectations of others, free from the need to perform or conform, and free to explore the depths of one's own heart and mind without distraction. In a world that constantly demands our attention, where the voices of others often drown out our own, solitude becomes a sanctuary, a place where we can hear our own thoughts without interference. It is here, in this stillness, that we are given the chance to truly understand ourselves. No longer do we rely on external validation or approval to guide our decisions. Instead, we find the courage to follow our own inner compass. It is in these quiet moments that we can rediscover what it means to be truly alive, to be fully present in the world without needing anyone else to affirm our existence. Solitude is not to be feared, for it is in these moments of aloneness that we find our greatest strength. When there is no one else to turn to, we discover that the resources we seek were always within us. We become our own greatest ally, drawing on the deep well of inner wisdom, resilience, and creativity that lies dormant when we are constantly surrounded by others. The silence becomes an invitation to dive inward, to confront our fears and doubts, and to emerge stronger, more self-aware, and more aligned with our true purpose. Creativity, too, thrives in solitude. The mind, unburdened by the demands and distractions of the outside world, is free to wander, to explore new ideas, and to make connections that may not have been possible in the presence of others. In the quiet, we access a part of ourselves that is often overshadowed by the noise of everyday life. It is here that the seeds of innovation are planted, that new thoughts, art, and expressions are born. Solitude is not the absence of life, but the space in which life can be experienced more deeply. Furthermore, solitude allows us the freedom to detach from the roles we play in the world. When we are surrounded by others, we often find ourselves living according to expectations, what we should be, how we should act, what we must do. In solitude, there are no such constraints. We are free to be ourselves without apology or explanation. It is a space where we can peel away the layers of social conditioning, reconnecting with the raw truth of who we are beneath the surface. In this way, solitude can be a form of liberation, a return to our most authentic selves. There is a subtle power in being alone. In the quiet of solitude, we come to realize that we are not dependent on others to complete us. Our sense of wholeness is not reliant on the company of friends or family, but on the acceptance and understanding of ourselves. In solitude, we are reminded that we are enough. The external world may offer us distractions, relationships, and fleeting moments of connection, but true fulfillment is found in the depths of our own being. Solitude, in its purest form, is the gateway to understanding the fullness of who we are. The freedom found in solitude is unlike any other freedom, for it is not freedom from something but freedom to be everything that you are, without limitation or compromise. It is the liberation from the subtle chains of dependence, the desire to be validated by the gaze of others, the need to perform in a world that constantly measures, ranks, and compares. In solitude, there is no judgment, no expectation, no need to live up to someone else's idea of who we should be. We are free to be ourselves fully and completely, with all of our flaws, strengths, and complexities, without the pressure of fitting into predefined roles. This freedom is transformative because it allows us to experience life without the burden of societal approval. We begin to live for ourselves rather than for others. The subtle but pervasive desire to seek external validation fades away, replaced by a deeper sense of self-worth that is independent of anyone else's opinion. In this space, we discover that we do not need to be validated by others to feel complete. We are enough, just as we are. When we remove the need for constant companionship, we also free ourselves from the constraints of conformity. Society often tells us that we must surround ourselves with others to find meaning, that we must seek relationships, friendships, and social circles in order to feel validated. But in truth, these external connections are fleeting and often rooted in surface-level interactions. The deeper, more lasting connections are formed when we become whole within ourselves. Only then can we meet others from a place of true authenticity, not from a place of need or dependency. There is also a profound freedom in the recognition that we do not need to cling to anyone or anything for our sense of happiness or security. When we are free from the fear of losing others, we gain the power to fully appreciate the present moment, to experience life on our own terms without attachment. It is this non-attachment that creates true freedom that allows us to love without needing to possess, to be with others without relying on them to complete us. In this freedom, we can experience life with openness and curiosity, rather than with fear or expectation. Freedom from dependence also opens up new possibilities for personal growth and transformation. Without the distractions of others' influence, we can hear our own voice more clearly, trust our instincts, and make decisions that align with our deepest desires. We are no longer swayed by external opinions or the pressure to conform. We become the authors of our own lives, choosing the paths that resonate with our inner truth. This inner freedom leads to a greater sense of peace, as we are no longer at the mercy of external circumstances or the opinions of others. In solitude, we also begin to appreciate the true nature of our independence. It is not the absence of connection that makes us strong, but the ability to stand on our own, to rely on ourselves, and to find joy and fulfillment in our own company. This independence does not mean isolation or detachment from the world. Rather, it is the freedom to interact with the world without being dependent on it for our sense of worth. We become self-sufficient in the truest sense of the word, capable of experiencing life fully and freely without seeking to fill any perceived emptiness with the presence of others. Ultimately, freedom from dependence is the freedom to experience life on our own terms, to live authentically, and to cultivate a deep sense of inner peace that is not reliant on the ebb and flow of external circumstances. In this space, we realize that we are never truly alone, for we are always in the company of ourselves, and that is enough. The recognition of impermanence is one of the most liberating truths we can come to understand. It is the key that unlocks freedom from attachment and allows us to experience life with greater clarity and appreciation. When we accept that nothing lasts forever, neither relationships nor circumstances, nor even ourselves, we free ourselves from the fear of loss. We begin to see that everything, including our connections with others, is a fleeting moment in the grand expanse of time. Relationships, like all things, are not permanent. People enter and exit our lives, sometimes unexpectedly, and this is simply the nature of existence. To cling to the idea that relationships must last forever is to resist the natural flow of life, to deny the truth that all things are born and fade away in their own time. To hold on to people as though they will never change or leave is to set ourselves up for suffering. But when we recognize the impermanence of everything, we can let go of this illusion and learn to appreciate what is here now without grasping or holding on too tightly. In the context of friendships, this understanding is especially powerful. We may find ourselves experiencing the loss of a friend, perhaps through distance, misunderstanding, or even the natural course of life. But instead of viewing this loss as a tragedy, we can choose to see it as a part of the ebb and flow of life. Friendships come to us at the right time, and when they leave, they make room for new connections, new experiences, and new growth. To mourn a friendship is not wrong, but to be attached to the permanence of it is to resist the natural cycles that govern life. In letting go, we honor the impermanence of all relationships and allow ourselves to move forward with grace. Understanding impermanence also helps us navigate the feelings of loneliness that sometimes accompany solitude. In the face of such feelings, we can remember that nothing, not even loneliness, is permanent. Just as relationships change and evolve, so too does our internal landscape. Emotions, like the weather, pass through us, and they are not meant to stay forever. When we embrace the impermanence of our emotional states, we are less likely to be overwhelmed by them. We begin to understand that feelings of isolation are temporary, and that they too will shift as we grow and evolve. In fact, it is the very recognition of impermanence that allows us to appreciate the beauty of life more fully. When we understand that nothing is permanent, we are more present, more alive to each moment. We savor the fleeting moments of connection with others, understanding that they are precious precisely because they will not last forever. We learn to embrace change, to flow with the rhythms of life, rather than resist them. Every experience, every person we meet, every emotion we feel becomes an opportunity to be fully present, to honor the moment as it is, without trying to hold on to it. Impermanence also teaches us to cultivate a sense of detachment, not in the sense of indifference, but in the understanding that we do not need to cling to anything to define our happiness. Our worth, our peace, our joy are not dependent on the permanence of people or things. They come from within, from a deep understanding of our own impermanence and the impermanence of the world around us. This realization frees us from the fear of losing what we love, because we understand that love, like everything else, exists in its own time, and we are capable of letting go without fear. Ultimately, it is through embracing the impermanence of all things that we come to live more fully. We stop taking things for granted, we stop expecting permanence in an ever-changing world, and we begin to find peace in the transient nature of life itself. We can let go of our attachments to relationships and circumstances, knowing that they are not the source of our happiness. We are free to love, to experience, and to grow, knowing that all things, including ourselves, are part of a constantly changing dance. This is the liberation that comes with the recognition of impermanence, the freedom to be fully present with the transient nature of existence. In embracing solitude, we often find ourselves reconnecting with the world on a deeper and more meaningful level. Initially, solitude may feel like a disconnect from others, but over time it becomes the bridge to a far more profound connection, not just with ourselves, but with the entire world around us. When we stop seeking constant companionship, when we stop depending on others to fill the gaps in our lives, we begin to perceive the subtler interconnections that are always present. There is a beauty in solitude that reveals itself only when we step away from the noise and expectations of the world. It allows us to experience life more intimately, to observe without distraction, and to truly feel the pulse of the universe. When we are not caught up in the constant chatter of external influences, we are more attuned to the rhythms of nature, to the flow of energy that runs through every living thing. The sound of the wind, the rustling of leaves, the movement of water, these become moments of profound connection. We begin to recognize that we are part of something much larger than ourselves, something far more expansive and interconnected than we might have realized before. Solitude does not isolate us from the world, rather, it opens our eyes to the deeper unity that binds all things. When we are alone, we often become more attuned to the impermanence of life, the fleeting beauty of each moment. We begin to see the world not as a collection of separate, disconnected events and people, but as a living, breathing whole. We recognize that we are part of the ever-changing flow of existence, and in that realization, our sense of isolation melts away. We are not separate from the world, we are it. Our solitude becomes a portal through which we can more fully understand the interconnectedness of all things. The experience of being alone offers us the opportunity to reconnect with our deeper selves, but it also provides the space to reconnect with others in a more authentic way. When we are no longer dependent on external sources of validation or company, we can meet others from a place of true presence. We are not looking to fill an emptiness within us, rather, we are engaging with others from a place of wholeness. Our relationships become more meaningful, more genuine, because they are based on mutual respect and shared connection, rather than on the need to escape our own loneliness. In this way, solitude does not lead to a loss of connection, but to a deeper, more profound one. It is through embracing our aloneness that we are able to reconnect with the world around us in a way that is more grounded, more authentic. By stepping away from the constant demands of social interaction, we can better understand the subtleties of human connection and appreciate the beauty of quiet moments spent with others. True connection comes not from the quantity of relationships we have, but from the depth with which we engage with the world, both in solitude and in company. Through solitude, we rediscover the true nature of connection not as a series of external relationships that we depend on to validate our worth, but as a deep intrinsic unity with the world and all its inhabitants. It is the realization that we are never truly alone, that we are always part of something greater, and that in embracing solitude, we come to see the world more clearly with greater love and appreciation. In embracing solitude, we discover that being alone does not equate to being lonely. Instead, it becomes an opportunity for profound connection to ourselves, to the world around us, and to the deep unspoken unity that binds all existence. It is in those quiet moments of solitude that we truly understand our own essence, our place within the vast, interconnected web of life. Through solitude, we release the need for validation from external sources and find fulfillment in our own company. In doing so, we open ourselves to deeper, more meaningful relationships with others, grounded in authenticity and mutual understanding. Ultimately, solitude teaches us that we are never truly alone. We are always part of a greater whole, and when we recognize this, we can experience life with a sense of peace, presence, and deep connection. The illusion of loneliness fades, and we begin to live fully, embracing every moment, knowing that we are enough as we are, and that everything is unfolding exactly as it should.